Just on the thing about barter, so you're saying that the world's got it all wrong when it comes to bartering, because just say, for example, I take it to like a trade, and a painter barters...
Like a physical trade.
Yes, so a painter barters with a carpenter to get something, right?
Yes.
But a painter wouldn't trade with a painter.
Yeah. Why wouldn't he? Why would he train with a painter when he
can do it himself? So bartering, the way you're saying, it's all wrong, because...
Well, it's all unloving.
Unloving, yeah.
It's expecting something from another person that you're not willing to give them.
Yeah.
So, see, this is why a barter system in the long run won't work. A gift system is the only thing that can work. A gift system is different. A gift is, I'm a painter, and I would love to give you the gift of me painting.
Without anything back.
Without anything back. Yep. And that would prompt, usually, a feeling of, wow, appreciation and other feelings within yourself. And if you had anything that you felt that I might need, that would later probably prompt you to feel like, oh, I'd love to give to...
But see, I grew up in a European family.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you do, if you do it out of giving without anything in return, they feel so bad and they feel like they're obligated to give you something back.
And the reason why people feel bad when you give them gifts is because they then feel obligated to return. And they don't know how to receive a gift. And we have not been taught as a society how to receive a gift. Does that make sense? As a society generally, we have not been taught how to receive a gift because we've been taught from a very, very young age that if anybody gives you a gift, you have to give them something in return. That's what we've been taught. You look at Christmas time. How many times have you ever been given a gift at Christmas time where somebody gives you a gift and you've forgotten to buy them one? How often do you see the reaction to that is, firstly, your own guilt. You feel terrible, like how could I have forgotten them, and all these other things. You feel this terror. And they themselves often feel anger. Where's my present? And which actually triggers the fact that they weren't giving to you in the first place. They were demanding something from you in return. Now, if you were in a true gift-giving society, what would happen? I would give a gift without any expectation of any return. Right? So, in other words, we'd have a Christmas tree and I could give a gift to people who have not given a gift to me, and we'd all be completely happy. In fact, the receivers, instead of feeling guilt, which is a fear-based emotion, would be happy to receive. And their joy would be multiplied by the fact that they're happy to receive and not in guilt about receiving the gift. Do you understand? So a true society, and if we take the painter analogy in a minute, but the true society wouldn't be focused on bartering. They'd be focused on gift giving. Let's look at how that might work in a practical example. Farmers produce a lot of our food. Is that not correct? Many of us live in high-density cities, not able to produce the food for ourselves, and farmers live in low-density areas. Often they have land that they're able to use to produce food. So many of the farmers also enjoy doing that as a job. They enjoy being on the land, working on the land, and if you've ever done it yourself, you'll realise why, because you feel a deep connection to the land, a deep connection to the things around, and there's a lot of joy you can receive when you're in that place of farming. We as a community expect the farmer to pay for the implements that he farms with. Right? This is an amazing and very stupid and idiotic thing for us to expect, actually. We should be giving him the implements to farm with. He is producing one of our essential items, food, without which we won't have very much long-term survivability. Is that not agreed? And yet, instead of helping him do that for us, we ask him to pay for doing that for us. Now, of course, the farmer then, in receiving this demand, then feels like he wants to be paid for his service. Many of the farmers would be very, very happy to produce all the food that they want, that their land could produce, for free, if they had been given everything they need to do such a thing. Many of the farmers would be totally happy to do that. In fact, I know personally many farmers who would be very happy to do that. Right? Many persons who are in their passion on the land, wanting to grow things for other people, wanting to do things for other people, would be very, very happy to receive a heap of things, fuel and seeds and equipment, to do this for you, for society, and they'd just feel an immense joy of not having to worry about money ever again. Right? Ever again. If it's a bad year, they don't have to worry about paying off any debt. They don't have to worry about paying off any land. They don't have to worry about paying off any people. Because all of the things they need, even during a bad year, are going to be supplied to them because they have this desire to produce our food. Now, that is a gift-giving society where the farmer is wanting to give the gift of his effort to society, and society wants to give the gift of all the tools and implements and all the resources and everything else he needs to get that done. You imagine that society in comparison to the society that we live in today. A society we live in today is an economic society based on the bartering system, if you think about it. It's like paying for resources. So the people who produce the tractors get fed at some point by the farmer, and yet they want the farmer to pay for the tractor that the farmer then uses to produce the food that the guy who made the tractor needs to live. Now, that all could be circumvented if we had a gift-giving society. But to have a gift-giving society, we've all got to be far more trustworthy and trusting than we currently are. Right? If we have a barter society, what we finish up with is the painter and the carpenter negotiating. The painter says, I'll do 3 days' work for you, you do 3 days' work for me. Now, 3 days' work for the painter might result in half the wall being done, whereas 3 days' work from the painter might result in a whole house being painted. Right? And so how do we evaluate its worth? It's impossible to evaluate its worth properly and realistically. However, if the painter gives the gift of his time to the person, and the painter at the same time received all of the things he needed to do it, like food, shelter, clothing, paint, resources, whatever he needed to do the job, then he wouldn't be worried about how much it costs. If he was happy to paint, he'd just be happy to paint. And if he's not happy to paint, he'd find another job that he's happy to do. Right? And people argue with me a lot about the fact that this isn't a practical thing in an environment, in a social environment. Well, I'd argue that all through the spirit world, this is exactly what happens for a start. So there's many social environments in the spirit world, and this is what happens. So I don't agree that it's not a practical thing. Secondly, if you look at what we're currently doing, is crazy. We are currently paying, you right now are paying for essential things that you need for your very life to be sustained. For example, you're paying for your water. Here in the city, you are paying for your water. Without water, you'll die, right? And yet you're paying for it. You're paying for your food. Without food, you'll die, right? Particularly if we've got emotional injuries that cause us to eat a lot more. We'll definitely pass in a very quick time without food. So without those two resources, we'll die, and yet we have to pay for them. In fact, you look at how much of your so-called budget per week goes towards those two resources, less so towards water. Although if you're looking at drinking water, like water that's actually tasting nice to drink, then the average person would need around 3 to 4 litres a day if we were honest with ourselves and looked after ourselves. That's around $1. It's about $1. The cheapest water you can buy is about $1 a litre, right? So we're talking $4 a day times by 7 days, $28 a week. If you've got a family of 4, $120 a week for good water to drink. Right? Now, this is why many of us don't drink good water. We drink the water that's been treated and has got all chemicals in it through the treatment process and so forth, because it just costs too much to even buy decent water to drink. Then let's look at what we eat. How many of us would spend a good couple of $100 a week at least on food? If you look at, particularly for a family, you'd be looking at probably $300, even $400 a week on food easily in some cases, right? You add those two resources together, there's, let's say there's, on the average, $400 to $500 if you actually paid for your water. There'd be $400 or $500 of your resources per week that would go on food and water to essential things for your life. We haven't even talked about shelter yet, or clothes, which are also needed, particularly in a cold environment, right? But just those first two things. Now, how much wage do you actually earn, the average person? Well, let's say in Australia, the average wage, which is very different from the lowest person's wage, but the average wage might be around 50,000 per annum, let's say, right? Take out taxation, now it's 40,000 per annum, or 42,000 per annum. And then if you look at $600 per week, how much is that up to? $600 per week, 52 weeks in a year, how much is that? It's about $30,000 per annum. So now you've got $10,000 per annum to do the other things, other than the essential things for your life.
Shelter and clothing.
Right, and when you think about that, you've now got to include shelter and clothing in that other $10,000 and so forth. Can you see why most people are finding it very, very difficult to make ends meet? And therefore, what do they feel? Huge amounts of fear about money. Right? This is part of the problem. And the reason why is because we're all engaged in this barter system. The whole world is engaged for centuries, for millennia actually. This bartering system has been engaged because none of us are capable yet, emotionally capable, of moving from that system to a gift-giving system. And when I say emotionally capable, we're not emotionally capable of becoming more loving, it seems. For many, many millennium, for thousands and thousands of years, we've not been emotionally capable of moving from this low development society where everybody barters with each other constantly and tries to get as much for as little as they can, to a gift-giving society where we're willing to give everything without getting anything in return. Completely the opposite mentality and completely the opposite development in love is required for those two states. When we enter a gift-giving system, a gifting system, we are now even behaving even more ethically because we no longer have demands upon other people. Right? So we're now in a very ethical transaction with another person. We're doing for them exactly what we would love them to do for us. So that is a very highly ethical proposition and therefore a highly ethical society. Now, we are capable, with our mankind's intellect, we are capable of developing this kind of society. We are capable of its development as long as we address the emotional impediments inside of us that cause us to be so unloving as to be resistive to such a society. We have the intellectual cleverness and the capacity to love that would allow us to do it. But it's a matter of developing ourselves in such a manner that eventually gets whole groups of people into that condition. So the beauty of examining this question of ethics, and the reason why I'm sort of starting to raise these subjects of love in action, like how does love look like when it's acted upon, is because it helps you start to analyse what's happening inside of yourself that causes you to not be able to act in the manner that would be more ethical and therefore more loving. And it causes us to be more circumspect regarding yourself. Now, I'm not suggesting you need to punish yourself for your past behaviour and inaction. Right? So I'm not suggesting we need to do that. What we need to do instead is to love ourselves enough to move from the unethical behaviour that we currently get involved in into a place of higher ethics and therefore higher love. Now, this matter is immaterial of whether we want to connect to God or not. The only way for our society to actually develop further is for all of us to change the way we view society and our demands upon it. That's the only way it's going to become better than it currently is. We can continue doing exactly the same thing that we're currently doing, and then we will end up with exactly the same results as we have ended up with for thousands of years. Do those results appeal to you? Do you like the fact that you spend $500 a week of your money having to live? Right? Do you like the fact that if you don't earn that $500, you feel stressed, fearful, afraid of the outcome, afraid of what's going to happen to you, and afraid of your life? Do you like that? Well, if you don't like that, why are we doing it? We need to change what we do. Can you see? So we need to become more developed even in our logical way of looking at life. Can you see that? And the reason why we are not more logical is because there are emotions in us that prevent us from becoming logical. Right? We often view everything as normal as what we currently have. It's like what we raised yesterday. Remember, I started talking to you yesterday about what we view as normal with regard to ourselves, and then what God views as a mess in comparison to normal. Yeah? And we need to also see it from society. What we view in society as normal. So it is normal to pay in society, it is normal to pay for your water. It is normal in society to pay for your food. It is normal in society to pay for your shelter. Is it normal in society that if you're distressed, that you pay for your medical? You can even be dying and you still have to pay for your medical.
You could die and your family.
No, this is true, isn't it, in our society? We can be dying and we're still going to have to pay for our medical, right? Somebody's going to have to pay for our medical because that's demanded of us, right? Our clothing, right? All essential items, right, for a society that's developed, and yet every one of those things we have to pay for. And because we have to pay for it, we now expect everybody else to have to pay for anything we supply. Can you see that? If I've got to pay for water, then of course I want you to pay for water. And if I've got to pay for shelter, then I want you to pay for shelter. And if I create your shelter, I would definitely want you to pay me for your shelter. But these are all essential items. It doesn't make sense in a developed society, right? In any developed society, it doesn't make logical sense that we pay for these essential items. Right? I can understand you paying for non-essential items. So, for example, you want a piece of art on your wall. Well, your wall can exist and you can exist without a piece of art on it. And if you want a piece of art on your wall, I can understand that you might need to pay for that piece of art to be placed on your wall from somebody who will make that piece of art. I can understand that you might need to pay for music. You are totally capable of creating your own music. And if you want music from another source, then I can sort of understand why a developed society might ask you at some point to pay for that music, particularly if it uses a lot of resources to create. But I do not understand in a developed society why we have to pay for our medical, our shelter, our food, our water, and our clothing. And our funeral. Our death. Well, the reality is that the energy needed to produce all of these things is freely abundant to all of us. That's the reality, right? And the earth itself has methods that we can use to produce this energy. We receive enough energy from the sun to do all of these things. Is that not true? To provide for all of these things for free. And yet we don't. And we think we're developed. We think we actually are logical. And I'm saying, definitely not logical, and we're definitely not developed if we think that paying for this makes any sense logically or ethically. It doesn't make any ethical sense that a person has to pay for their own medical expenses. You think about the ethical. How would you like it? You're incapacitated, your leg's broken, you can't work, you can't do anything, right? And then have to pay for the fact that your leg's broken after you've also been laid up for 6 weeks and unable to do anything. Now, I can understand why a person might need to pay for self-destructive medical expenses. In other words, if a person drinks himself into oblivion and then has to have his liver removed or kidneys, replaced through some donor process, then I can understand completely why he should have to pay for that particular operation. I do not understand why an accident would be something that we'd need to pay for. Now, I know in the end you could argue that the law of attraction has brought you the accident and there's all these emotions involved in the accident. And there are ways to do with all of that in an ethical society. However, if we love other people, no matter what accident has befallen them, we'd want to help them, would we not? And would we we wouldn't want to add to their burden by now asking them to pay for us helping them, right? Now, so these particular things. Now, anybody who provides any of these particular things should be given all the resources and everything they need to provide these things. We shouldn't demand in a society that is logical and ethical, we should not demand that any person who supplies any of these things actually has to pay for anything to do so. Because these are all essential things that we need in society. We need enough water, food, shelter, medical attention, clothing, and funerals to be happening. Because these are all a fact of our current life. Now, I'm not saying they're a fact of our future life, but what I'm saying is that they are a fact of our current life, and we could easily raise the entire consciousness of mankind by just changing the way we do a few things with those basic particular things that we need. Right? So there would no longer be sweatshops where they get paid $1 a month or $1 a week to produce your clothes. They'd be given all the food they need, all the material they need, all the things that they need, all the equipment they need, all the tools they need to produce your clothes if they wanted to produce your clothes. Because that is ethical. We would be doing for them what we would like to be done to ourselves. Yep. It's also logical, if you think about it. Why would you want something that you desperately need from another person, such as water or food, and then force the person who's producing such a thing that is essential for your own life to actually pay for doing you the service? Why would you ever want that? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So my feelings are that we are totally capable as a human race to change what we do from this unethical bartering, economical bartering system that we currently have into a purely ethical, particularly with the basic essentials of life, into a purely ethical delivery of services that we're able to achieve as a human race. We're totally capable of this. It's just whether we want to do it enough or not as to whether we'll do it. But we're totally capable of it.